We'll go ahead and get started in a minute. Joe, can you?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, folks, can you make sure that you're muted? Okay. Your mic is on, Jane, in front of you.
Yeah, I just make it stop. Should stop when I do that. We need to turn it up.
Maybe it says.
Turning the volume.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone just mute. Okay, what if we try? How about now? We're all connected.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, can folks virtually hear me? I see some thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Apologize. Let me start again. So, hello again. Welcome to the 14th meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Wednesday, November 15th, and we will be here from 6 to 8 p.m. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Our co-chairs, Jose and Leah, will facilitate tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. I'm just going to go over some meeting logistics before we get started. This is a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being live streamed on our YouTube channel. Also, it's being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted on the city's transition webpage under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning, American Sign Language, and Spanish interpretation available. To access Spanish interpretation, click on the globe icon on the bottom of your screen and select Spanish. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. Committee members, please change your chat settings to everyone so folks listening in can follow along. And please remember that the meeting chat is part of the public record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not be able to answer all the questions live in the meeting, but they also become part of the public meeting record. At today's meeting, we do have time held for verbal public comment, but as a reminder, folks can submit public comment at any time online by calling 311 or by emailing transition@portlandoregon.gov. And I will now pass it to Jose to review tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Tonight's agenda includes like always, committee business, then a discussion with Mayor Wheeler, opportunity for public comment, committee engagement updates, the October 2023 transition status update, and the transition annual report and committee reflections. Before we adjourn our meeting today, we'll close with a brief review of our next steps. And I will make a note that public comment has been moved till after the mayor speaks, which is not usual. So everyone's aware. Next slide, please. Next slide.
It's not working.
Okay, we have all the technical issues. Well, the next slide is committee business. And we have one excused absence today, and that's Ani. Otherwise, we expect everyone here in full attendance. And as mentioned at our last meeting, want to preview our next co-chair rotation. So next slide, please.
Some people,
As a reminder,
trying to get into the room.
the responsibilities of the co-chair are all in our bylaws, and you can see them here. But just to highlight a few of them, besides the very visible responsibility to facilitate the meetings, the discussions, there are also a lot of things we do behind the scenes that, we work with staff to develop agendas. We provide feedback on a variety of issues, and honestly, we get a lot of chance to interact with Leah and I and with the staff, and it fosters a real environment that's really conducive to collaborating, and we get to see what a lot of the questions are that come in from everyone, and we talk about them at length and decide what things we should include, what we should talk more about, what we should talk less about, et cetera, et cetera. Leah and I will help onboard the new co-chairs before their first meeting. And at our next full committee meeting on December 5th, we'll appoint the next rotation of co-chairs, who will then begin chairing the meetings in January 2024. And co-chair rotations, as a reminder, are approximately every 3 months. Next slide, please. Working agreements. Our final order of committee business, as always, is to review the working agreements. The working agreements state as follows. In discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals, offer constructive suggestions, approach different opinions with curiosity, seek to understand, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work, arrive on time and prepare to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers, keep multitasking to a minimum, keep focus on the objectives of the meeting, utilize co-chairs to know additional topics for discussion by submitting topics in writing via email. Next slide, please. Honor the decisions of the group. Contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. Step up and step back. Collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. Embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools and use I statements. Now to Leah.
Thank you, Jose. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, at this point, I want to extend a warm welcome to Mayor Wheeler for being at today's Government Transition Advisory Committee meeting. Welcome. As a reminder, the Government Transition Advisory Committee was created to ensure that the charter amendments approved by voters in November of 2022 are implemented effectively and efficiently. Over the past several months, Mayor Wheeler has reiterated that a top priority of his during his remaining time in office will be to lead a smooth and successful transition to our new form of government. Since we have a common goal in our work, we thought now could be a good time to establish a firmer connection between our committee and the mayor's office, and to also to hear about the transition status from his perspective. Before we invite Mayor Wheeler to speak, though, we want to share a little bit about our own work to date. Next slide, please. Thank you. The advisory committee represents a cross-section of Portland, from those engaged in community service, those having local government experience, a few policy analysts and advisors, those from high-tech real estate, management consulting, marketing strategists, presidents of neighborhood associations, equity advocates, and even an environmental activist. We got it all. We are diverse in race, gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, abilities, and geographies. And the one thing we have in common is that we are all committed to supporting the city's implementation of this transition. In our initial months as a committee, we focused on building a foundation for our work and understanding our role in this transition. This included developing a community engagement plan, advising on council operations code, creating 2 subcommittees, and formulating a work plan. With this groundwork laid, we are now more deliberately focused on advising on transition work areas such as city budgeting, community engagement, code updates, city administrator recruitment, future service delivery improvements, and council operations and voter outreach through our subcommittees. Next slide, please. Community education and engagement is a core piece of our committee's work. Every committee member has committed to provide at least 2 quarterly education or engagement opportunities for community members, with at least one of the opportunities being provided in partnership with a community or communities that have traditionally been left out of City Hall decision-making. This includes Black, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, Latinx, Latine, people of color, people with disabilities, immigrants and refugees, non-English speaking communities, people under 25, houseless Portlanders, people who live east of 82nd Avenue, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Between June and October, we completed 24 presentations and are now averaging between 9 to 12 presentations per month. At these presentations, we tend to provide an overview of the charter amendments that were approved, offer details on the transition process so far, and leave ample time for folks to provide questions and feedback. Some of the themes that we've heard during our time out in community include some confusion about ranked choice voting, an interest in how district offices should function, the costs of the transition, and a lack of opportunities to provide public comment. We're excited to move forward with addressing some of these concerns through our subcommittee. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jose, and I believe we can stop screen sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we get into questions from committee members, we've asked the mayor to share some opening remarks. In particular, 1 year into the transition process, what are your reflections? What work are you proudest of? What have the disappointments been? And what opportunities and challenges do you see on the horizon? Mayor Wheeler?
Yeah, hey, thank you. And I apologize, I'm on my cell phone. My city-issued laptop takes about 20 minutes to bring up, and I just got out of council. So it eventually somebody will have to invite that in, but it can take a bit of time. First of all, I want to thank you all for your ongoing commitment to public service and the hard work you've done around the transition to a new form of government. The voters only approved this just over a year ago. And so I want to be really clear. On the whole, I am really pleased with how it's gone. I do want to keep these remarks brief. I know you have a number of questions, some of which I received in advance, and I appreciate that. I want to start by thanking the transition team. I know that a number of the transition team individuals are present today. Yeoman's work, outstanding job on a massive, complex project. So thank you for that. We're working at what Mike Jordan described, I thought of, was very apt. We're working at a stupid fast pace, getting as much in place as quickly as possible to support the next mayor, the city administrator, and the council. There have been a number of major milestones that the team has reached over the course of the last year that represent some major accomplishments and are highlights of the transition for me, things I'm super proud of. The team updated our elections code and ensured that we had all of the legal changes made in the future processes identified to ensure that the county will be able to administer the new ranked choice voting program next year. And that there is a lot of technical work that went into that, and it's gone really well. And I want to thank everybody who worked on that. The governance team, of course, brought initial code changes focused on council operations to ensure that the future council has a framework to operate on day one. We wanted them to be able to come in and be able to operate, be clear on how things work. It's really hard to come in as a new commissioner or as a new mayor. And even when the systems and the program and the protocols are all in alignment and in place. And so it's really important that we have as much of this done as possible. We also, frankly, want the candidates for mayor and city council to know what they are running for. And I think a lot of good work has been done on this front. The Salary Commission took a thoughtful and I thought very professional approach for setting the salary ranges for the new elected officials. They were themselves people very familiar with HR related issues and salary comparisons and the like. But they also took a lot of feedback from the community and they made adjustments accordingly. And that to me was a great example of putting good ideas out there, having them thoroughly vetted by the community, accepting feedback and responding to the community with demonstrated changes as a result of that feedback. Then there was the Independent District Commission. This one I thought was going to be the thorniest of all. But they did really great work. They impressively drew the 4 districts, which elect the next city council, with a huge amount of community engagement. And I'm crossing my fingers, but so far, no legal challenges. And quite frankly, I have heard very little negative feedback at all. And I sort of thought this was going to be the most contentious part of the whole process. So it just goes to show I don't know it all. And I was super happy to see that. Then there's the facilities plan to renovate City Hall to prepare for a 12-member city council, a mayor, and a city administrator. Admittedly, we ran into some challenges there, but we ended up in a good place. And the designs brought by our contracted architects, I think, are really just tremendous in terms of an improvement, in terms of the look, the feel, the experience for community members, the experience for council members. And I think people are going to be really blown away by the final result when they see it. And coincidentally, I just got out of city council a few minutes ago. That was our last city council meeting in those chambers as they were designed decades ago. And so we're going virtual while they move some of the equipment over to our new spot down the street. But today was the last. And then, of course, not last but not least, the city council adopted a new city organizational structure that can rationally report up to a single administrator. We obviously have a lot of work to do in this area to develop that structure and to prepare a budget that can support it. I'm proud of the way the Bureau leadership in particular brought forward ideas. Council offices worked hard to collaborate. I'll be honest, I didn't agree with everything that the majority of the council wanted to do, but honestly, I think we can work them out. I think we can still make things work the way we need to make them work. So there have been challenges along the way, I would say, just in conclusion, but on the whole, I'm really pleased with the work that's been done. And I want to thank you all for your continued engagement.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. We ask committee members to send questions for the mayor ahead of time. Leah and I have compiled the questions and tried to combine the questions, especially if they touched on similar themes. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We have 4 prepared questions. If time remains, then we can take some additional ones. Mayor Wheeler, you have positioned yourself as a champion of the transition, even to the extent of connecting your decision not to seek another term with your laser-focused commitment to transition. The Government Transition Advisory Commission is focused on ensuring that the transition is effective, efficient, and consistent with the city's core values. Since our goals are aligned, how can this committee most effectively support you in your efforts, and how can you most effectively support us in ours? What is the best approach to moving through disagreements in vision and/or approach to the transition process?
Yeah, this was a great question, and it's comprehensive, and it gets to a number of important issues. First of all, I think the best way that you can be of help to me, and I see this as a bit of a quid pro quo. I think it's also the best way I can help you is to continue to execute on the work plan that you developed with the transition team, continuing to support my efforts, continuing to support the work we're trying to do in carrying out the ballot measure, advising the transition team, and making sure that we're creating a good level platform for the interim city manager. I think there's going to be a lot of need for public education, particularly around the ranked choice voting. There are definitely designated efforts to complete that work, but I think GTAC is going to be really important in terms of amplifying here. I'm going to switch over to my other thing here. Let's see one sec. See if this even works. Can you hear me? Oh. Hang on.
Familiar with this issue.
Yeah, unfortunately, my teenage daughter is in the other room. She could have done this in about half the time. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So I think you're going to be a credible community voice in terms of helping to clarify some of the work that just got off. The budget process we just kicked off. We're obviously moving towards a more unified budget process. I think that will also be something that we're going to get a lot of questions about. How is the new budget process different than the old budget process? The bottom line is it's going to be outcome based. It's going to be program offer based, meaning program by program. We're going to have specific goals, specific outcomes. And within the different service areas that we have designated, which will ultimately be reporting to deputy city administrators, we have specific goals around those as well. And I think you're going to be an integral part of helping us to support that. Last but not least, none of us have a monopoly on the truth here. Nobody's ever done this before. And I think you guys continuing to be creative and innovative, I think that's going to be great. We may have a different vision on the process or the timeline or the approach, but I think we all agree we want it to be successful.
Thank you. Now, what are the most common questions and comments that your office's constituent service staff are fielding about the transition? And more specifically, what piece or pieces of the transition process do you think the general public have the most misconception about?
Yeah, good question. And sorry, I've been talking all day today, so my voice is a little challenged, but I can absolutely get through this. So first of all, I deal in the arena of misconceptions day in and day out. And one of those misconceptions is that as mayor, I am an island. The reality is I cannot make citywide decisions unilaterally. I need the support of my colleagues to get things done. For example, the organizational chart, I didn't create that. That was proposed after months of work by the charter transition team. It was led by Mike, working with bureau leadership and council offices to create the proposal. The impact of the amendments that my colleagues pushed forward to the organizational chart came to council November 1. It was a long council session. We had a lot of discussion, and I'm guessing the public is probably very confused about where we landed exactly. And that remains an open question that I think I will have to clarify, my colleagues will have to clarify, and frankly, Michael Jordan and his team will have to clarify. But the bottom line is I want you to know we can still move forward with this. It may slow us down a little. It may throw down a couple of roadblocks and add a few challenges. I'm sorry, I should have said that. Michael Jordan, the Chief Administrative Officer for the city who's leading the transition efforts. The second area is really around the cost of the transition and the fiscal 24-25 budget. You're going to hear a lot of discussion from City Council on that. We're hearing a lot from the public on that. I I want to be really clear. The estimates that were provided to the Charter Review Commission were very loose, and they were created with very limited data inputs because no decisions had been made at that time. And so much was unclear at that time. So you're going to hear a lot of people say, well, the budget really ballooned, but the original budget was a very low confidence estimate of what it might cost depending upon how it looked. We obviously know a lot more now about what the actual changes to government are going to look like. We have higher confidence estimates, and we also have the reasoning behind those higher estimates. We're also going to have to communicate our creative thinking around leveraging existing resources as much as possible to meet those costs. I think there's a variety of tools in our budget toolbox that we'll bring to bear, and we will do our level best to be as cost effective as possible on the transition. But I'm going to keep telling the public, look, I'm not going to shortchange this process and put the next council and the next mayor at a disadvantage so that we can save what is effectively a rounding error on our overall city budget. We have to get this transition process right. This is the system of governance for our city. This is what the public has demanded that we do, and I think we should give it our fullest and our very best effort. There's two issues that my constituent services folks hear about a lot. First, the climate issue. The public engaged in a coordinated emailing campaign advocating for a new climate officer. They're calling for greater coordination across the service areas to address climate and help the city meet its climate action goals. The second area we heard a lot about was the role of neighborhood associations. And the neighborhood associations also participated in a coordinated communication campaign to express concern and confusion about where neighborhood associations and district associations landed within the new structure. And where we had put it originally was under Portland Solutions, under the mayor's chief of staff. But a lot of folks from the neighborhood network, the infrastructure, thought it should actually be reporting to an assistant city administrator. And so I want you to know we listened in both cases, both with the climate officer and the neighborhood associations. We've done exactly what the community asked us to do, and that is reflected in the amended organizational chart that the council passed.
Thank you. Okay, now for question number 3, given the approach the other commissioners are taking on the transition, namely retaining full control over their boroughs through the end of their term, it seems that there will be a sort of transition cliff on January 1st, 2025, where the new government will need to take swift and sweeping actions. How does that impact your approach to carrying out the transition? And what impact do you anticipate those actions having for onboarding the new government? Does the new government need a detailed playbook for an immediate to-do list to get started?
Yeah, so look, obviously I'm disappointed. It was a 4-1 vote. I was the odd man out, but that's democracy. My colleagues are thoughtful, smart people. They had their reasons for doing what they wanted to do. But my belief is we don't want a light switch moment. We don't want to be in a commission form of government through 2024, and then on January 1st, 2025, all of a sudden we switch to a completely new form of government with new alignments, new systems, new reporting structures, and new people being responsible for the service areas. And so it was my hope that we would transition sooner to basically the new form of government. My hope was that on July 1st of 2024, the interim city administrator with interim deputy city administrators overseeing each of the 5 service areas would be responsible for the enterprise-wide management. The council still would play the role as the legislative body. They would not be stuck just being in charge of particular bureaus or particular service areas. They would now have free reign to discuss the entire enterprise. So I thought that for them, they would see that as a positive expansion of their opportunities. And they didn't see it that way, and that's fair. But I still believe, based on my subsequent conversations with Michael Jordan, the deputy or the city's chief administrator, I believe that we'll get most of where I wanted to go by the time we transition the government. We'll be ready to do it. There's going to be a lot of onboarding requirements, new technical changes that need to take place, changes within each of the service areas. And I want to assure you that charter transition team members, Tate and Jamie specifically, are working on the policy and process pieces. There's going to be some opportunities here for GTAC to advise on the approach and the materials there. And I appreciate that. I think the risk of what my colleagues did by maintaining their direct management authority over the service areas is they've created a little bit of confusion between the role of the city administrator versus the role of the legislative body. By crossing over and maintaining management authority. And my question for them was, if you have a disagreement with the city administrator, who decides? Is it the city administrator, the interim city administrator? Is it you? Is it the interim city administrator? And I don't think all of those conflicts have been worked out, but we will work them out. And my colleagues have pledged to work with me on that. And I think we'll figure it out. So there will probably be continued growing pains on this subject between now and, say, July 1st of 2024, but I'm pretty confident we'll land in a good place.
Thank you. As you know, this transition is difficult for so many reasons. But what do you say to Portlanders who distrust the current mayor, the council, and the bureaucracy making decisions for an entirely new set of decision makers, an entirely new system? What do you think are the roles for those who aren't currently in office or in the city bureaucracy, and who want? What role do you think candidates running for office should play?
Yeah, and first of all, government distrust is at an all-time high across the board. And frankly, I think that's why such a radically different charter reform measure passed overwhelmingly here in the city of Portland. I think in large measure, just to be blunt, I think the public fired us. And they made it clear that they do not want commissioners to have management oversight or responsibility. They made it clear they're tired of siloed government, and they want a structure that honors collaboration across service areas. We do actually do a lot of collaboration now, but it's despite the commission form of government, not because of it. And I think what the voters wanted was a form of government that automatically creates that kind of collaboration. And it's more important than ever. You know, when we're talking about permitting, there's 7 bureaus under 3 commissioners involved. When we're talking about homelessness, there's about 9 different bureaus under 5 different commissioners involved. When we're talking about public safety, there's at least 3 commissioners involved. And so I'm really confident that the management piece of this is going to be a huge improvement. I don't expect to change any hearts or minds. People have made up their minds about me. They either trust me or they don't. But I think the proof will be in the pudding. It's going to be dependent upon the outcome that we provide. And if we provide a seamless transition to the new city council and the new mayor, if we have our bureau leadership already aligned, if we have the deputies working with the city administrator and the bureau directors in a collaborative, collegial manner, I think the public will notice it instantly. The flip side of that, if we screw this up, you're going to have 12 new commissioners and a new mayor coming in, not only trying to figure out where the restroom is, but also having to build a new form of government on the fly with, frankly, limited experience. And I do not think that is fair. And as a guy who's been at City Hall now for 7 years, I'm really determined to leave it in better shape than I found it. And That's what we're going to do, and I feel like we're on track to do it. As far as potential candidates, they're all watching what's going on. I think they're paying attention to your work. They're paying attention to the transition team's work. They're paying attention to the city council's work, because we're talking about the job they're running for, and they want to know what it is. And so I feel like they've been really engaged, and frankly, I'm grateful for that. I've gotten a lot of good feedback and advice from people who are seeking to run for the city council on how they'd like to see this ultimately finalized. And from my perspective, the sooner we can do a dry run, if you will, of the new form of government, the better. So I'm really looking to be up and running under the new form of government July 1st. And it may not be exactly what I'd envisioned, but it'll be close.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a few extra minutes, so I will take a few additional questions.
Yeah, sure.
There's none from community members. Do we have any in the room? And please keep your questions to 90 seconds, and then let the mayor answer that. Thank you. Fred?
Thank you, Jose. Mayor Wheeler, thank you for all the efforts you've made and the sacrifices you're making for this transition. Over the decades of siloization of the sundry city bureaus, many bureaus have developed separate support services such as IT, purchasing, permitting, community relations, including citizen budget committees. What can be accomplished in this next budget cycle that you're now undertaking to condense these duplications rather than wait for downstream, quote unquote, future improvements?
Yeah, well, there's going to be a combination. I think there's an opportunity to streamline. There's an opportunity to consolidate. And I will be more specific about this in my guidance. I've already let my colleagues know that, they've made it clear they're going to retain their commission form of government oversight of each of the service areas, but I get to put the budget guidance out, and the budget guidance will have very specific instructions for each of the service areas, and they will not be cookie cutter. We will have different requirements in different service areas based on the need. And I'm sorry, I can't be more specific about it at this point. I think this is also a great opportunity, as you pointed out, to reevaluate citizen input. I mean, I hear a lot of frustration on the part of people who participate in citizen advisory committees. And I'll be honest, it's not because people on the council don't want to hear what people have to say. The problem is there's only 5 of us, and we've only got so many hours in the day, and we have dozens of advisory committees. And so you sort of do have to pick and choose based on the priorities that the city is facing at any given moment. I think there is an opportunity to be smarter about it. And frankly, any input you have would be advisable. Most of you have probably served on more city advisory committees than I have, and you could probably make better recommendations. And I'll tell you, I will be very open to suggestions.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have other questions?
I'll ask one.
Julia?
Good evening, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you so much for making time for us. My name is Juliet Hyams, and I use she, her pronouns, and I can't see you right now, but I'm going to try to get back to your face. This is slightly tangential, but in a recent council meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about urban forestry and the city's tree canopy. And meanwhile, in Northwest Portland, PBOT is talking about removing up to 30 trees for intersection improvements. I'm just curious how you would interpret that discrepancy. Is that symptomatic of the silos in government?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. The short answer is yes. And we heard a lot about that. That's a great question, because we heard a lot about that in public testimony, and particularly around the climate officer and where in the organizational structure the climate officer should reside. And honestly, it gets even kind of sillier than that. And I'm not casting aspersion on city employees. They do the best they can under pretty trying circumstances. But it's not even clear once the trees are planted, who's responsible for maintaining them. And we had a really embarrassing situation this summer where a bunch of trees that PBOT, I believe, had planted, they were planted, they were great, but then nobody watered them and they died. I shouldn't laugh, but there you have it. And I think the miscommunication was that PBOT felt it was their responsibility to install trees as infrastructure, but then the responsibility of parks to maintain them. But that coordination never happened. And I believe if we had a climate officer who is looking at tree canopy as part of one of our climate action goals, which it is, and frankly, one of the easiest things we can do to help reduce carbon emissions in our city, I'm very hopeful that these types of imbroglios won't happen going forward. And again, I don't cast the blame on anybody. We're all equally at fault on that one, but it really illustrates one of the weaknesses of the commission form of government, which is that people have very narrow missions aligned with their bureaus that their commissioners in charge of, and they don't necessarily think broader about the enterprise-wide implications of what they're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Amy? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, Mayor Wheeler. We've received a number of community questions and feedback over the new role of the mayor going forward. And I think that's been one of the harder ones to answer and give people a feeling for what the mayor's core responsibilities will be beyond hiring the new city administrator. I'm wondering if from your unique vantage point, if you could give a little bit of perspective on what other important roles the mayor will have and how the voters should look at the qualities that they're looking for in this new mayor.
Yeah, great question. And I have heard really smart people say, on one hand, that the mayor will have more authority because they will be the only citywide elected officer, and the mayor will effectively control the operations of all of the bureaus. That's what I've heard on one hand. On the other hand, I've heard people say that the role of the mayor is being diminished, that the mayor will be weaker, the mayor is no longer participating in legislative decision-making unless there is a tie. I've even heard it suggested that the mayor is a de facto employee of the city council because the city council will establish policy and then direct the city administrator to implement it with the mayor in charge of oversight. I think both of those analyses miss the broader point. I got chastised today for hours on something that as mayor I had very little to do with. I've been blamed by a congressman for the state of mental health services in Multnomah County, something we don't do at the city of Portland. I've been called out for being inattentive or not engaged enough on the school strike because I'm the mayor. And what one can conclude from all of this is people think the mayor should be involved in everything. All politics is local, and the mayor will always be asked first, what do you think about this? And if there's any issue happening in the city, whether it's Metro's responsibility or the state's responsibility or ODOT or the counties, the mayor is always going to be held accountable for the condition of the city, no matter what. And that sounds daunting on one hand, but it's actually a tremendous opportunity because the public, particularly those who come from other parts of the country where you have a strong mayor form of government, they think the mayor has the authority to do things. And so the mayor can often get away with more than probably the mayor should. The mayor still has the power of executive directive. The mayor still has the power of crafting the first budget, which means effectively your colleagues have to respond to the first budget, which is frankly tougher than actually crafting the first budget. And most importantly, the mayor will always have the bully pulpit. And the bully pulpit is probably the most valuable tool in the entire toolkit. If I call a press conference, the press shows up. If I call a reporter, they will always answer the phone. And that's probably the great power of the mayor. As for all the other stuff, it really just depends. A lot of it's relationship building. The mayor would be foolish not to attend council sessions. The mayor needs to have a good professional open communication with all 12 members of that city council, because ultimately the mayor is going to be told by those 12 mayors what he or she is supposed to do. And so I think it could be a great opportunity if the right personality is there playing the right cards.
Thank you. Mayor, I know you've had a long day, but do you have time to take 2 more questions?
Of course. Yeah, of course I do.
Perfect, thank you. First, this was from the community, from Joseph Emerson. Joseph said, also as someone running for city council, the new government structure is not just a change to how government works, but also a change to what campaigns for city council look like. Do you have any thoughts about how city council candidates this year can help set the tone and shape future election cycles?
Yes. The exciting part, if I were running for city council, is you're going to get elected or not based on your performance in your district, which means you're going to spend a lot more time going to community events, neighborhood association meetings, business district association meetings, nonprofit organization meetings in your district. And that means the new city council is going to know their districts a lot better than the current city council does, because we're citywide. When I ran for mayor both times, I went to dozens and dozens and dozens of forums all over the city, but I think the new councilors will take a deeper dive in their districts, and they'll truly become experts at the grassroots level in their districts. And I think that's a really great opportunity for the city. And frankly, I'm kind of jealous. Having been a crisis management mayor, I haven't been able to be at the grassroots level the way I wanted to be. I started my first campaign taking a desk around and dumping it on street corners and just talking to people. And that was a lot of fun. That's what energized me. And the last several years have really been about high-level crisis management. And that's sort of taken me out of the grassroots retail politics sphere, which is why I think most people want to get into it in the first place. They care about their neighbors, they care about families in the neighborhood, they care about the local schools, they care about the local parks, and they want to have a say. Now, I would also give a piece of advice to all of them, which is to say, don't be completely parochial, and understand that all the neighborhoods have issues and they're not entirely dissimilar. And so I think one will have to have 2 frames of reference, looking sort of downward into their own district, but also horizontally at the other districts. And I hope they will take the time to go and meet with people in other districts, even though no votes come out of it. A lot of goodwill and a lot of good ideas would.
Thank you. Juanita?
Yes, thank you. Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you for your comments regarding the concern about city advisory committees and the level of engagement. And I want to ask you that before you leave, you can, as much as possible, advocate for that issue. I'm very concerned, and we talk about this as a group, regarding the fact that right now there's not a culture that is permeates throughout the organization regarding truly effective community partnerships with the community to govern. And that's one of the visions of one of the goals for this transition or the change in government, to have a participatory form of government. We submitted some recommendations regarding that issue, but it was not reflected in the organizational structure as presented. Right now, every bureau or every department do their own training for their advisory committees. So there's no consistency. So everything else depends on what that person in charge of that specific department his understanding about what or participatory government is. I think that is really critical that with this change, we take advantage of it and we develop a real structure for a centralized training for city advisory committees. So they all have the same understanding and the same level of understanding about their role in a participatory type of government. And so I'm afraid that that maybe get lost because there's so many things that are, like you said, that need to be taking place, and it's a real complex process. However, if we don't take this opportunity to do it, it will get lost in the shuffle. So,
yeah, Juanita, thank you, and I agree with you. When things get tough, the city council's legitimacy comes from the public. And people feel disconnected from their government right now. And it's not just Portland, believe me. I spent a lot of time with mayors from all around the country, but a really robust structure that is geared towards community engagement. What do I mean by that? Not only soliciting the input from the community, but also having a way to reflect that you have heard what the community has said, and then you can show either where that learning has been included in policy making, or you can give a straight up answer why it wasn't. And what I have found is people can live with, I gave you an idea, but you didn't like it for whatever reason, and you told me the 3 reasons you didn't like it. Now, nobody likes to be told no, but at least people feel respected. They feel heard. And I think it's been very frustrating for people that, when I got here, we had something like 250 phone lines that went to nowhere, like lines that actually had like voicemails on them that nobody was answering, responding to. And that was shocking to me. But at any rate, you'll be happy to know there is going to be a community engagement officer as part of this structure, and it will be their responsibility to help us with this work. So you're speaking my language in terms of what we need. There are so many times when community could help us, particularly during challenging times like this. And there just aren't the proper mechanisms in place to make that happen. And there should be.
Thank you.
I mean, this government isn't city councilors or the mayor. The government is the people. This is the people's government, and they need to be heard, and they need the commissioners need a good way to interact with and respond to the public.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you so much for taking the time, like you said, of joining us today. We really appreciate being here and sharing your thoughts with us. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, just thanks. I really appreciate it. I mean, here you are at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and I know everybody has a lot of other competing things, family and jobs and other work, and you choose to be here. And you're not getting paid very well for it. So I just want to tell you how much I really appreciate it. This is what makes the city work. And this is what will make the city recover. So please know you have my respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. So now we're going to go to public comment. We can get the slide deck back up. Oops, virtually fair me. Awesome. Oops.
Right.
Yeah, just going to.
Folks usually hear me now. That's for the rent. Okay.
Oh, it is,
Folks actually hear me?
Uncle with somebody.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, we're having some tech issues in the room. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna repeat myself, but we're just gonna go to public comment now. We're running a little bit behind, but we've only had one person sign up to give verbal public comment tonight, so I think we should get back on track. And that is Michael, who I think is in the room. Come sit in my seat, so folks can see you if you don't mind, and I'll get up. You come sit right here. And then folks can see you. So this is Michael. He will introduce himself. Michael, you have 3 minutes and I'll just give you a nudge if you start to go over. Thanks for being here.
Okay,
Go ahead.
we'll be reading. Oh, here.
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, everybody, thank you for all you're doing. Your passion comes through when I watch all the sessions. As context, for some of my comments, the runway cost for the new government that's being proposed is currently running 13 million over the existing budgeted resources. And I think there's additional cost implications for a lot of the things that you guys discussed a couple days ago. Last week's budget work session highlighted the city has a bunch of significant funding constraints, so keep that as context. One of the fundamental topics that the transition team in GTAC need to wrestle to the ground, I believe, is flow that matters requiring council input and approval, the interaction model between the executive and legislative branches, and how and when stakeholder input will be solicited. This issue, I believe, was first raised. It's my interpretation that Bill Farber mentioned. It was mentioned in a June 6th meeting, and I wrote to all of you first on June 12th. Monday, there was some discussion in your subcommittee meeting on legislative process and a separate legislative and policy staff and district offices and processes which Terry and Juanita raised. I believe these have significant run rate cost implications. That doesn't mean they're bad. We got to keep centered on that, because if we don't deal with it now, it will be dealt with later when all this goes before council. And I think this stuff needs to be firmed up, the specifics, before council onboarding. Hopefully socializing it will speed up the time so we can have something to council so they can be instantiated in code when they are impaneled in January 25. I'm worried about phase 2 being post January 25. And I think sort of what I interpreted from the mayor, he might be partially agreeing with me. And hopefully fiscal year 25 can better anticipate, and fiscal year 26 budget will be better informed with that. The objective is for the council to hit the ground running, recognizing it can and will evolve based on experience. It's not going to be perfect day one. We got to get something in. And until I see all this stuff flowed through and understood, I think we're not understanding the cost implications. So I stated in my prior communications, this means defining, and I suspect staff is doing this, I hope they are. What are all the different kinds of ordinances, resolutions, appointments, everything that goes through council, the flows, the points, the bodies of review and whatnot, the budget process, the proposal, how it's proposed, review, and I know you guys want to dig into that. How policy priorities identified, defined, reviewed, approved, etc., and how and when public input is handled. All that implies a lot of work of a lot of people, and if we don't understand all that up front, it's going to have implications later on the cost.
That's 3 minutes. So do you mind wrapping up your last thought?
Okay. This is going to come in another memo to you guys.
That's great.
We cannot afford for the council to muddle along without the first pass by January 2nd. Regarding the legislative policy staff, there are 2 schools. Minneapolis Comprehensive Analysis is heavy on strong mayor cities, with most with separate heavy staff. The list of cities that were in the material you reviewed on Monday had some council manager forms of government cities as well. They're light on staff. They got to find some middle ground and all that. Staff mentioned they're working on this. You guys have expressed, I believe I heard that, are interested in working on this. You guys got to work together. You got to collaborate. Doing this sequentially, which is what I perceive is going on, is just going to burn up time, and you're going to get frustrated. And so you got to, otherwise, you guys are going to raise questions. It's going to be a lot of what if analysis questions to them. They're going to have to come back to you, back and forth, back and forth. It's going to take time. Okay, I'm
Fine on
done.
that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you please send thoughts in writing?
Oh, yeah.
So you can express them fully and we can take a minute.
Okay, I think I'm turning it back to Leah.
Yes. Thank you. We could move to the next slide. All right. And for community engagement updates, y'all. So first, I'm going to turn it over to June to share her key takeaways from October 2023 engagement status updates. And then we're going to open it up to the entire committee if we have time to do so that people can share some of their key takeaways. And let's see, after we take your feedback and any questions about the community engagement status update, like I said, then we'll get people to share their reflections. So June, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thanks. Can you all hear me? I'm trying to project to the microphone. Yes, okay. I'll try to keep it brief to be able to have other folks share their insights around engagement. Just the same things similar that I brought up last month around employee town halls and policy discussions as future opportunities, especially as we look at planning for the new year. We did get a lot of zip code data this time and noticed again that we don't have as much participation from East Portland. So it's another area of focus that I will try to focus on. And I think the last thing I wanted to bring up is Terry had shared some thoughts around, kind of reading public comment and sort of kind of getting meaning out of some of the nuanced public comments. And so there's including some guidance in managing mass public comments and how we can group those together to then be able to look at the whole and just really kind of more efficiently manage this process. So those are some of things that I'm thinking through and sort of areas of focus as we kind of get to the end of the year and start planning for next year. And so if anyone has any questions, please, we can take them now, or you can put them in the chat, and also invite folks to share about some of the engagement y'all have been doing. We've been doing a lot. I think we're nearing 20 presentations in November, so you all have been very busy. So thank you for doing all that work.
Thank you, June. First, does anyone have any questions or comments about that engagement activity? Harry? Harry.
Just real quick, I wanted to point out that Michael, who just testified, has written us a lot of times and some really good stuff. And so I wanted to appreciate him showing up and speaking today and helping us focus on this. But it's there in those written materials on page 300 and whatever, are some really good things. And I hope we won't miss them in the future. So that's all.
Thank you, Terry. Are there any more questions or comments specific to the engagement update? Amy?
I just wanted to share.
Oh, yeah. If there are no more questions about the update, then it's moving on to sharing about things. So I think we're good to do that. Amy?
I just wanted to share, Terry and I visited the South Burlingame Community Neighborhood Association, and they were very excited to have us. They were interested in primarily ranked choice voting, wanting to know how it works and wanting us to return for some information. They were also interested in the questions about costs and salaries, not anything like too contentious, just more really wanting information and wanting us to be as possible. And finally, they had some discussion that was just interesting about their neighborhood coalition, how that's going to work. It has what implications for how they are delivered services. And so it was really interesting to hear from them about that.
Thank you. Oh, I love seeing all these hands, lots of engagement happening. I'm just going to go in order. Lori, you're up next.
I had two presentations that I did this past month. One of them was with the Northeast PDX Village, really engaged 55 plus community. I had 25 minutes of presentation and 45 minutes of comments and questions. They were really interested, and it was rewarding to be able to provide the education. I continue to be amazed at how little people know. So I feel like it's such a huge opportunity for us. But their questions were around ranked choice voting. So a healthy amount of skepticism around the software readiness and tabulation. They're really interested in can we trust it at any time. Understanding advantages of ranked choice voting. We wanted to understand the new organization, how many new staff members, how much are we paying people. They were really interested in having district offices and excited about the opportunity to be able to walk down the street, meet their city councilors. So that was really good. Last night I talked to Venture Portland. They're a support organization of all of Portland's neighborhood business districts. I was surprised. So they wanted to understand how the business interests will be supported in the new organization structure. I was surprised that they didn't know. So that was, but they had similar kinds of questions, and they also offered office space for a district office. So please get a hold of them.
Thank you, Lori. I want to remind folks, and in case you haven't noticed, we're having a little bit of mic difficulty tonight. So we just have one that's in the center here. So it's going to be good practice for speaking from your diaphragm and trying to do your best to project this evening, please. So with that, Jane, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Echoing Laurie's thing, both the neighborhood associations that I spoke with the Old Town Chinatown Community Association and the Mount Tabor Neighborhood Association. They all offered office space because everybody is losing people from their offices. So they kind of like said, no, we need our city councilors here in our neighborhoods. And you know, why is the budget not showing that? So we had a little conversation about that with the emphasis on safety. I was most interested in the difference of the two neighborhood associations. The Old Town Chinatown Community Association is big and vocal because it has to, because it's had so many issues. And they did a hybrid meeting. There were at least 50 people in the meeting and at least 50 people zooming in. But the Mount Tabor organization is still zooming. And if there were 12 people, I would be surprised. So I think that our neighborhood association is kind of like struggling to find how they operate. And they were really very, very interested in where the neighborhood sat in this chart. They were most anxious for support and help and wanting more access. The Old Town Community Association was so well informed, it was scary. When there was questions about the budget, somebody actually just stood up and could quote how much the overall city budget was, and to remind everybody that the piece of the pie on the overall, but on this part of the budget was so small, they would put it in perspective. And I found that so overwhelmingly amazing. What I found that people were quite excited about ranked choice voting, but wanted to know more. So from both of the neighborhood associations, they said that the ranked choice voting subcommittee needs to get a plan to go back to all the neighborhoods and do that. And they invited me back to do that. You know, God, hope I can meet that request. So
Jane, I'm gonna jump in here just because we're about at time. No, I really appreciate everything. I think what I wanted to say is there are a bunch of hands still, which shows me, I think all of us have started to do a lot more engagement recently, and it's starting to show. Clearly, we need to leave more time for this at future meetings, because what I don't ever want to do is have us not share with this. So what I'm going to do is Fred, Amy, and Amy. I'm going to write down your names and hopefully we can come back to you later in the meeting if we have some time. If not, for the next meeting, we'll make sure that there's time to share on engagement. Does that work for you, or is what you want to share timely for tonight? Is that okay? Okay, excellent. Thanks for working with me all. Brad,
Just
you-
one thing.
yeah, go
just
for
one
it.
thing because of the issue about district offices is that someone said to me today, a state official, that architecture drives behavior, and to have these fancy permanent offices for not just the counselors, but their professional staff at City Hall suggests that's where they're going to be, as opposed to in the districts where they really should want to be, where they can interact with their constituents. And so and I'm not on that subcommittee. So those of you who are, I thought I just impart that observation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And again, I promise we'll have more time moving forward. But we've got so much to dig into tonight. So I'm gonna ask us to move to the next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to ask Shoshana to share her key takeaways from the October 2023 transition status update. And then we're going to open it up for feedback and questions.
I wonder if we might be able to do both of the topics together. We've got the annual report and the status update, high level, and I think that we could give you some time back to talk about engagement. Absolutely want to talk about everything that you want to talk about, but just kind of hearing what the mayor had said, he'd really gone through a lot of our key successes, which are outlined in the annual report. So maybe if you have any questions about our annual report or what we've the progress that we've made over the last year, we can talk about it as we're also talking about status update. So key things that you'll see in the status update is that we're really moving forward with implementing our change management strategy. You'll hear more about that next month as we're finalizing it this month. So, that's just a little preview. I don't know if they've seen a copy of the change management plan, but I think you saw an early copy of that. So moving that forward with great partnership from our Bureau of Human Resources and others through the city, ensuring that our professional development programs, such as our LEAD program and our Pathways to Leadership program, also include modules around change management. So really trying to help the city's culture change to a change management culture. So that's something that I'm really excited about, and you'll see a little bit about that in this month and more about it in next month. The elections section, there's a lot of new information in that section. What it really shows to me is that the work is becoming much more coordinated with the county. We're really excited to know that the Portland contests will appear on a separate page, so they'll be separate from the rest of the election contests, and also that there will be a instruction sheet specific to ranked choice voting for Portland elections in with your ballot. So that's really exciting progress. We have great partners over the county, and our elections team is working really hard to ensure an effective election in 2024. Facilities will be bringing a resolution to council on the 29th. So there's a lot of information in the status update about the status of where we were with facilities when we finalized the status update. This is a constantly evolving conversation, but the council action will be a resolution memorializing the agreement on vacating the second floor offices for construction and the future or the implementation of bringing district offices on and kind of a plan for district offices. So of course, our big news was that on November 1st, after the completion of our status update, that the organizational chart was adopted by City Council. So you heard the mayor talk about it pretty briefly this morning, or this evening. It's been a really long day. Happy to talk about any of those topics, anything that kind of jumped out to you. If you have questions, there'll absolutely be more conversation about our organizational chart in the next month's status update, but happy to answer any questions. And I really hope that you had a chance to read our beautiful annual first year update. What it really gave us an opportunity to do as a team is to really reflect back on everything that we've accomplished. And like the mayor said, we have been very effective. We have been very effective implementing the charter required elements and pointing us in the direction for implementation of a new city administrator and the city administrator's office, and ensuring that we have a legislative council and executive branch led by the mayor. So I'm really pleased with the report and of course, all the information that's in there. It is, you know, that there's a small army of us that is putting this together, all this work. You know, it is a full team effort, and everyone is on the team is really driving towards implementing the will of the voters. So happy to take any questions and to hear more about your engagement the first time.
Shoshana, I just want to check in. Are you wanting to just take questions about October 2023 at this point?
I'll take any questions.
Okay.
I mean,
we have a few more slides that are specific to the annual update. I'm wondering if we should put those up.
They're just pictures of the beautiful annual update.
Let's put them up for the have those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to share those slides as well.
Great. Okay, it's an exciting meeting. We are 1 year into the transition. We're halfway there. So now's the time that we're going to open it up for you all to share your questions about what's happened so far and also your reflections on the process. So first we have Jane.
Actually, I wanted to make a statement about this really wonderful piece of work and to offer Shoshana and her team gin. It seems that you guys are working so hard. And at the beginning, I asked, where's the opposition to this plan? And you had said, there really isn't any because the voters have said, let's go. But there has been really, really hard opposition, I think, internally. And that's the hardest opposition. The stuff that we hear in the community meetings, we don't get to live with day in, day out, but you live with it. So first of all, congratulations for the volume of the work and the brilliance of the work, but also the steadfastness of your teams. I think you have to have a really stiff backbone. And again, I think we should call gin or your alcohol of choice to any meeting. But thank you for the work. The thing that the community has asked, they asked me, what's your opinion of the work being done? You're like us. What do you think? And I always say, I'm blown away by the talent of the staff. So thank you. Just thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jane. Lori.
I had a question about the transition, the monthly report. As I mentioned when I was talking to the community about ranked choice voting.
Can you speak up just a little bit? Yeah.
One of the things that the community was asking about was skepticism around, will the software be ready? And I know that's the county, not the city, but I just wondered how closely we're monitoring that. And is that something we could bring in here so that we feel better educated about both the process of the software updates, the administration, the tabulation, et cetera? We can speak on it better.
Absolutely. And I think that there'll be a great opportunity. We can start that out, like when's the best time to have a more in-depth conversation, both about the software behind the scenes and the tabulation. I think you'll see that it's probably later into 2024 that conversation is really ripe. I am in pretty close conversation with the county, and they have a very strong relationship with their vendor, and they are working through the certification process. And not to say that it's a big black box, that's the certification process, but we're really not invited into that space. But what we are invited into is a strong partnership with the county. The county wants us to be as successful, just as we do. They are investing in our voter education. They have made commitments to fund elements of Portland's voter education plan. So we are really in lockstep, and it is very helpful for their implementation of the 2026 requirement for the county. So they are just as eager as we are in order to ensure that this is run smoothly. So let's make sure that there's a time. What I'm hearing you say is you want an opportunity to either talk with the vendor or get a kind of a more user experience from the county on the software and to understand the tabulation a little bit more.
I
Is that
think
right?
it's just confidence and readiness.
Yeah.
That's the last
Yeah.
thing we would want us to be surprised. I know nobody wants that.
Right.
But for us to be overseeing things, we don't want to be surprised either.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's make sure that that happens. And I know that Tim would be happy to come back again.
Thank you, Lori. One thing I want to note quickly is the numbers that are on the slide here about on the transition annual report are slightly different than what we're seeing in our handouts. So for people who don't have one of these paper copies in hand, Zach put a link in the chat to the transition report where you'll find the exact numbers of everything that's been published. Just want to make sure we're looking at the same information. Jose, do you have a question?
Yes. Shauna, you mentioned that there was going to be a one-sheet explanation of ranked choice voting and with the when you vote. Can we get to see that as soon as it's ready? And if it's not going to be ready till really close to election, mention that we would like for it to be ready early. I feel like even if we're explaining ranked choice voting, having the actual paper that they're going to get is very helpful to get any questions we want to have about it ahead of time, especially if when it's translated, we can get translations available to us. I know that comes up, so that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of part of a suite of materials that you would want, that I definitely want, that around what are the materials that we'll be using for voter education. It includes everything from this insert to the mailer to any materials for community groups to be using. I think you should have access to all of them. So let's make sure that you have that.
Yes, thank you. And I know, like even Jane mentioned, in the future having just RCV specific trainings. I already had to ask for RCV specific slides because people are already asking for it now. So I know it's going to be important. Yeah.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah. You could probably give me a training on it.
Yeah. Fred, I see your hand up.
Yeah, for those of you who didn't attend the voter education subcommittee's first meeting, all this was discussed. It takes a long time to certify through the Oregon Secretary of State's office and the national entities to a new tabulation system. And so as long as the county's working on it very hard, it became clear that Washington and Clackamas counties will send the Portland ballots to Multnomah County to be tabulated. That all takes a certain number of days because people can correct their ballots, do remedial balloting after election day. It's going to take, they'll have to be tabulated separately from the state ballots, the other local jurisdictions ballots, even at Multnomah County. So that's going to take a while. Because of the algorithms, it's going to take longer with the single transferable vote process to decide who the top 3 winners are in each of those 4 districts. Mayor, citywide mayor and auditor might be easier, but still, it's going to take a while. So patience for candidates after election day is going to be important. I think that's going to have to go into candidate education. But as far as sample ballots, Multnomah County said that they're working on it, but they really need to have the vendor tell them what the format's going to look like before we start passing out. Here's what the sample ballot's going to look like. they don't vote on these until next November, a year from now. Voter education needs to crank up quite rapidly in April, May, June, as we progress and through the summer. So I think patience on that regard, I would just recommend everyone. And then June, we're working on scheduling the next subcommittee meeting, right? With the county and the audit's office, et cetera. Thanks.
Fred, did they establish the reporting schedule for when results will be released?
Well, I asked that and something we have a written response. They're saying it could be 20 to 30 days.
They did say it's
to have
no
the
different.
final
The final,
result.
yeah.
They said it's no different than any other.
So 8 PM on election night, then there'll be another release.
I think the good news for the city of Portland is that many years ago, in order to keep the cities from running their own elections at odd times and getting tax measures passed at odd times, the like, that the legislature decided that the counties would do all city elections and special district elections, and they will pay for the city elections. And so this is not going to have a budget impact on the city of Portland to have this new ballot and tabulation system.
That's great.
FYI.
Yeah, thank you. At this point, I'm wondering if we can move on to the next slide. And get us in the position of looking forward while reflecting on where we've been as a committee. I think we've heard so much great stuff from Trishana and the transition team about the work that they've done. And this is also a time for us to reflect on where we're at with the process, the things that we've learned, and some reflections on the transition so far. I would love to open it up to the group and hear from as many of you as possible on what you've learned throughout this, or what your big takeaways have been so far. While you're all rushing to raise your hands, no doubt, I'll start first and say it's been a really rewarding process for me to, again, I think, echo what so many people have said and what we hopefully say, if not every meeting, we feel at every meeting, how grateful we are for the transition team and all of the work that you all are doing. It's incredible how much is getting done and how swiftly and how free of drama, I think, you all work. So thank you. It's really an honor to be able to work with you all on this. One of the other things that's been really interesting for me is seeing the ways that the public engages with this process over time. As I'm talking to different people, realizing for the first 6 months, let's say, that we were coming together as a committee, it didn't seem like anyone that I knew really cared about the transition or was particularly engaged. Obviously, a gross generalization. But what I've been noticing is when people tend to get most engaged is when there is drama that has been presented to them through the news, which I think is a challenge that all of us are going to have to think about moving forward with the transition, about how do we make sure that what people are hearing about isn't what they're perceiving as being negative news or news of how it's not working, but how do we do a better job of getting out there to make sure people know that really this is working and hear the good stories of how it's happening. Because it's great that people are engaged and it's great that people seem to have more energy and questions right now, but it's a bummer when they have questions based on perceived drama they're hearing about. That's my big reflection. Would anyone else like to share any reflections of their time on GTAC, things that they've learned or noticed so far? Yeah, Lori.
I wanted to echo some of the things that Jane said. I think that the work that's been done this past year is just unfathomable how much has been accomplished. And I have truly enjoyed doing this, being engaged in it. I love doing these presentations because I am thrilled to just provide how much work has been done, to be able to explain to people how huge this transition is and look at all of that that's been done. I think what Mayor Wheeler said, the districting, that got through. I mean, so far it's, it's really, obviously it was a ton of work, and I thought it was really interesting how they did it, but that it's come through with very little drama in the end. Yeah. So yeah, this has been a great opportunity. I think the communication has been really excellent. I think the transition emails are great, and I'm always pitching them to get people to sign up. So I think they're really helpful. The website is really helpful. This report is beautiful, really well done. And I think the partnership with the transition team has just been really wonderful. I loved being the co-chair because I got the inside scoop of what was going on, and I encourage everybody to sign up because it's such a great opportunity. But it's a good learning. The couple of reflections I had on the not so positive side is I'm sorry that we started so late. I think that we spent way too much time figuring out what we were going to do and catching up. And so I'm embarrassed at times about how little we've been able to do. But I understand why. And if we were ever to advise anybody else, I'd say you need this advisory committee, you need to do a lot sooner. I cringe when I say what our mission is around ensuring effective and efficient implementation of the transition, because I think that's an impossible task for this group, for how little we meet. And we meet a lot, but what you would have to meet in order to actually say that my mission is to ensure efficient and effective implementation of the transition. I think that's a misleading comment. So I don't agree with that. I would change that. We could try to point people towards our work plan, that this is what our mission is. And then the other part is around the community engagement. I think we have such a huge opportunity. And I still don't feel, and I know we're working on it, how to be a lot more strategic about it. Make sure that we're really, blanketing the community, not just with what bubbles up and who we can get through to, but making sure that we're looking at a map and we're getting out there to all the different parts of the community. People love, I think, hearing from us and love learning. That it can't just be organically growing. I think we really have to be proactive to get the communication out there. I know that the voter education will probably be better that way, but I think this is such a great opportunity for the community to learn about the government. This is the time. I hate for us to miss that opportunity. So I hope we can be better at being more strategic about it.
Thank you, Lori.
Juliet? I volunteered for this committee because I actually thought the new charter kind of scared me, worried me. And so I felt it was my civic duty to volunteer, and I didn't think I'd be appointed. But as time has gone on, I'm starting to feel pretty good about it. And sometimes I even feel excited about it.
Hey, sometimes, hey, I'll take that. I'll take that.
And the same for some of the decisions that were made. Decisions.
Julia, can you speak up?
Never get to the end. We wouldn't accomplish anything if we were trying to be part of everything. My concerns are, I think I heard from Michael Jordan that the population of Portland really corresponds to about 8 counselors rather than 12. And I can see if we were a growing city that number would be justified. And I'm just kind of waiting for criticism that, this is going to be big government and for a city that's shrinking. Now, maybe the city will start to grow once the charter is changed and things run more efficiently. It's going to be fascinating to see. And we haven't really talked about metrics, but that would certainly be one, although you could never really be sure cause and effect. Like, there's so many reasons that cities grow, but I'm kind of braced for that criticism. And I'm concerned about pushback on the budget, that it's going to be seen as big government, too fat. But I also think, and Mayor Wheeler kind of already said this, that by using, the opportunity to combine the district offices with neighborhood coalitions is a real opportunity to gain efficiencies, probably to get some bang for the buck. And I applaud us for really pushing on that issue. I'm not sure that would have emerged had we not been as vocal about it as we were and tapped into our communities about it. So, yeah, I think that I'm trying to do a little bit of, risk management and anticipate there, as Lori said, there are a lot of people, it's not even on their radar yet. And so there's gonna be some drama. There's gonna be some reaction, and I'm trying to anticipate what that can be. So those are the areas. And I don't know that how many people heard Michael Jordan say that 8 was really the more not appropriate number, but, justified by the population. So anyway.
Thank you.
Yes.
Destiny, you're up.
My mind just
Bring it.
went. I think one of the things that I was thinking about is kind of like what Lori was saying, that we were trying to find a rhythm, trying to find our purpose. And while we kind of have a starting point, I think what I'm really excited about, like after learning more about the budgeting process, more about these things, in this formal space, I think we haven't realized, the community hasn't realized the actual fast pace of it all, that it's all going to change. And I think what I really want to work on is scaling the information going out there, like working really hard with this amazing transition team to lead the narrative and not let it come out after a city council session and once media picks it up. Like, I think there's a lot of more excitement and consensus that's being shown here in the community, even Mayor Wheeler. And I think if we are more strategic in our communications, not just trying to go to these neighborhood associations or having community come to us, but reaching it out more widely could be better. Because people are, once election season comes up, we want a better culture, but it takes time. And so I think I'm excited to scale what we've learned. And that comes through our subcommittees. We want to scale this. This is one advisory committee, but this is a new government and we're touching that. So how can we be intentional about the work that we're doing? And so it's really hard to do community outreach, especially when, I think Jose and I were talking about this in East Portland, that was disenfranchised for so long. Now it's a whole district, but city council is still here in downtown. So how, and our public, education outcomes and data even supports that. It's still structurally so disenfranchised. How, I'm not going to charge that and I can't champion that, like Lori mentioned. So how do we do better? And how do we become vulnerable and have that conversation with the transition team? But you also don't own that work. How does that become cultural in this city?
Thank you, Destiny. Juanita.
Yeah, I want to echo the comments that were made about the work that the transition team has made, and all of the progress. I think that I recognize that, and it is a major task that you took over indeed. I also want to echo the comment specifically from Lori that it was unfortunate that we wasted so much time, so many months, not knowing what we really were doing and trying to find our own way, and sometimes becoming frustrated because we didn't know really what we were doing or what we were supposed to do. And then we had all of these things that happened in terms of hearing different things from different people. But anyway, I think that the most, I need to say also that I'm very excited to be part of the team. I'm just very, I feel very lucky to be working with the team. It's an incredible team that we gave in the committee. And I have learned a lot from each one of you. And so that's a really a gift. So thank you all, that's been wonderful to be working with all of you. One of the things that I have found the most difficult is the tension that is part of the process in terms of, in one hand, recognizing all of the good work that the transition team has been doing throughout, but also the fact that because of the responsibility again that we have, having to ask the questions, the hard questions, and having to sometimes come across maybe, I'm very sensitive and recognize that in terms of how the perception that the team may have from sometimes our questions, and or comments. And sometimes I have found difficult to articulate my thoughts and to make sure that I reach that I reach the transition team. So that is something also that has been a good for me personally in terms of just working in the process and trying to make sure that I'm making sense about what I'm trying to convey to you, to the team. And I think that is going to continue to happen. I think that I appreciate what you were mentioning about the change in culture, the process that you're looking to engage in the team. And because that is definitely, it doesn't matter how many changes in the organizational structure or how many changes take place in other areas, if the culture doesn't change, the same issues will continue to be there because, people are the ones who create the change and make change. And so I think it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm looking forward to continue to work with the team and with the committee. I'm excited about the possibilities, especially now that we are really focusing on specific issues. And now I feel like, yes, I know what I'm doing and I can concentrate in that task. So that's all. Thank you.
Joe?
It's a really good time to check in. And if I had to give it a grade at this point, I'd say incomplete. I agree with everybody that the transition team has done a great job.
Yeah.
I agree with everybody who said it, that it's really nice to be part of this group. It feels like we have come together, learned to know one another, and started to work together. I would add that the co-chairs, all four, have done a wonderful job. And, I wanted Lori and David to stay. And yet, Jose, and, so I really think that having the four co-chairs we have has made a world of difference. I also want to say regarding staff that Julia and June also, as our part of the transition team. On the other hand, I kind of feel like we have had a front row seat to this transition, and it doesn't feel much like we've been in the arena. This is an advisory committee. We haven't given very much advice. And the advice that we have given doesn't seem to have gotten very much traction. And if, 6 months from now, when we check in again, or a year from now, when we're, coming close to the end, it still feels that way, then the incomplete isn't going to lead to a very good grade, in my mind. I think that we really do need to take seriously that there's nobody else that's a watchdog of this process, ensuring that it is effective, efficient, and consistent with the values of the city. And that's a tall order for us, but there's nobody else doing it. And so I think that is our charge. I think that we also need to be advocates for all of those things. And for example, when the mayor talked about not having a light switch transition, it seems pretty clear that there are some important leaders in this city government that want exactly that, because they don't want to let go of one bit of the power that they've got until the very last minute. And if that happens, it's not going to be a very effective, very efficient transition. It's not going to be consistent with the values of the city. So the jury's out in my mind. I think that our subcommittee work will be really important in determining where we go from here. but I really hope that we can be ourselves more effective, more efficient, and more consistent with the values of the city.
Thank you, Joe. I want to do a quick time check. We have 10 minutes left. We'll be able to get through everyone, but just be aware of that with your comments. So Bill, we've got you up next.
Thank you. I've been very impressed with the cooperation and collaboration, with this committee. I mean, when most of us did not know each other, and that's really commendable. And that includes our city staff that's been enthusiastic about supporting us. I could just try to add a couple comments. The slide that showed some of our objectives, perhaps we could give consideration to making some of our objectives more concrete. The one concrete one is, for each of us in teams to give 2 presentations a quarter. The others are qualitative, and there's always a risk that one might slide. So I'm just, I don't have any answers, but that was one comment. Another, with regard to continuing or scaling up our outreach, I wonder whether we could take the initiative, with the support from, the mayor's office and city staff, to publish articles in newspapers. Even, I would think TV stations are going to want at some point to have some presentation on the impending new government. We could be part of that and reach a lot of people through broadcast. Thanks for ability to comment.
Thank you. Amy.
Positive things that folks have said, and the opportunity of serving on this committee has been incredible. I also agree that I'm excited for us to really get into our work. As the subcommittees start to take off, that feels like it's going to be a venue for work. So a couple of comments. One, thinking about our mission of reaching out to non-traditionally engaged voters. I went to a business networking thing of women in business, and I spoke to 50 people, and literally only 2 people knew that the government was transitioning. And it just really hit home to me that we are not broadcasting. And so forever my issue that we need to broadcast, but we need to broadcast. And I think that to the second point, it's felt hard to plug in to feel in the arena, which I on my part own. And I know that we're all volunteers, but I wanted to just put out that we could call each other in more. If there's communities, if there's places where more of us could be present. I feel like I just have kind of navel gaze, and it's been challenging to know where to plug in exactly. So yeah, just if there's more ways, and I don't know if there's a way we could solve this, but it's felt challenging not to have broadcast in our own committee. Not being able to fly all to the group or send a message to the group has felt like a severe handicap that we should somehow overcome or figure out a way. Because if we could share things like, come to this community thing, I'm having a barbecue, just the soft connective tissue, I think that would help us as a committee feel more genuinely connected.
Yeah. Fred.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I seriously considered resigning with Bill last summer because we weren't going anywhere, and we were told we couldn't go certain places where I felt somewhat passionate about, which is that we have a better form of government. And I felt that's what the majority of voters had voted for. I heard the mayor tonight invite us to more participate in that process. I think he's understood perhaps that the rest of the council hasn't quite grasped that they're lame ducks and that things are going to be so different in a year and a half, or less than a year and a half, that the community needs to be more fully engaged. And how we get to a cleaner system of government where where the bureaus talk to each other. I would invite that management council that Mike and with all the bureau directors dealing with the change management process, maybe make a presentation to us about how they are learning from each other, how they're learning to cooperate, talk to each other across these silo barriers so that we can, so that they can demonstrate to the public, to the citizenry, through us as a citizens advisory committee, that they are indeed working on it. They're applying themselves to this task. I don't mean for us to tell them how to do it or what to do, but well, I just want to know that they're doing it. And that's important, I think. And I appreciate Mayor Wheeler making that invitation to us this evening. I think that'll change how we, it might be a new subcommittee, Joe. I very much appreciate Julia and Nicole and June. I'm especially happy that June is working so hard as I reach out to my community and my groups. She's already been there, or that that's exactly who she wants to talk to. She's working on following up, and that's great. I think the more support we can get, the better. If we could have copies of the transition annual report as well, I think, to distribute when we talk to neighborhood associations, that'd be useful as well. I appreciate having the written materials. I know that we will have sample ballots come spring and can work harder on voter education. Julia, thank you for your dedication to us, your honesty, your candor, organizing us as you have. And Shoshona, you're kicking ass with the transition team. Keep it up.
Thank you, Fred. We have 4 minutes left and 2 people to go. So please monitor your time appropriately. We want to hear from you both. Terry.
I didn't think I was going to talk at all because you guys listened to this alternate plenty enough. And I appreciate that very much. And I agree that the transition team is doing tremendous work, and the transition itself is a tremendous amount of work. And I don't think all the work in the world is going to make it perfect a year from now. But I was taken by the mayor's optimism today to us, and his sort of understanding and awareness of the work left to do. And I think it was right. And I think taking that enthusiasm as a glass half empty kind of guy, I hope that we can do some real work, because I remain sort of deeply concerned about the light switch transition, deeply concerned about, as Joe put it very clearly, the lack of anyone else being a constituency for a good, clean oversight of this transition. And I'm deeply concerned about the next city council being given the tools that it's going to need to fundamentally work. And so I'm going to focus on these things and hope that our next year is better. But thanks to all of you and to the staff for accommodating me and listening to me and being on the receiving ends of emails. So thanks, and we'll check in a year, see what you think.
Thanks, Terry. And then finally, I'm going to close it out with handing it over to Jose.
Thank you. For my reflections, first of all, Terry, we'll listen to your alternate conversation all the time. Don't forget, just very short while ago, Lee and I were both alternates.
It's true. And
so your voice is just as valuable. And that's, even before you said that though, that one of my reflections was going to be that I've seen so many of us with very different views of how they either supported or didn't support, what they were concerned about or what they weren't concerned about. But I've seen everyone even with such different views, really dedicate themselves to saying, this is what's been passed. Let's do as good of a job as possible, regardless of review. And that's not what happens in these kinds of things all the time. So I really appreciated that. So like, even if Terry has concerns, he brings them up and tries to work on them instead of just trying to sabotage to say, oh, I said this was going to be bad, so it's really given me a lot of hope for the transition and what it can be. I was always one of the ones that loved the idea of the transition from the beginning. So that's what I was pushed to apply during this committee. I never realized how much I would talk about transition after being on this committee. Like, it comes up everywhere. It's crazy how much you end up talking about it. It's been said 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. We couldn't do any of this without the staff. And if you ever, and you should, are co-chair, you will know just even how much more the staff works. There is so much they do. So I do want to say again that I appreciate it. And then another thing I want to say is that I know Joe mentioned this, that we haven't given a lot of official advice, but I've been amazed at how well our unofficial advice is received. We've talked to people putting together voter education, and we've given them advice on things. Oh, that doesn't sound right. Or, oh, when you say something this, and all of a sudden the presentation includes that or doesn't include something. So even though it doesn't always feel like we're doing much, I've seen our fingerprints on a lot of things in small ways that are important, that our own personal experiences have helped staff develop things. I know Zach and some people changed the presentation and made it better. And like that, all of that is things we've done that we can't just forget because we haven't had official big advice. Because it's that work and that engagement that ultimately is the most important to the people. Like some don't care about code that much, but learning about everything that's changing and how to best communicate that is important. So I appreciate the time it takes for all of you to do that, because it's not you look at it and have an opinion. A lot of times we've read background for a long time. We've done a lot of work to get to that point. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jose. I'm going to hand it over to Shoshana for 1 minute. 1 minute, and then I will power through that.
Well, thank you so much for your comments tonight. I don't like to speak for all the members of our team, but I can truly say that we are humbled by the expectations of the community and by this committee, and it is our driving force to implement the will of the voters. So you've all highlighted some of the challenges that we are facing, and I just want you to know that we're taking your comments tonight, as well as the comments that we've heard over the last so many months that we've been working together, and we are prioritizing the effective implementation of the new form of government and elections methods to ensure success for our new elected officials and our new city administrator. And we know that it will not be perfect on January 1, 2025, but we are hoping to manage risk, and we are hoping to put in place the systems that will lead us to success. So I just want you to know that I do speak for the team when I say that we appreciate all of your contributions. We couldn't do this work without you, and that your input in large and small ways has absolutely impacted our work and made it better. You push us harder and you ask tough questions, and we should have answers to those questions. So it's better that we work out those questions with you, and then we're able to bring much clearer vision for our work. So thank you so much for your contributions tonight and every night that you're together, and the work that you're doing. And thank you. It's a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you. Okay, so you can put the slides back up. Thank you so much. All right, as always, any questions not answered during the meeting will receive answers in writing and be posted online. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website and is available after the meeting ends on the Office of Management and Finance YouTube channel. The second meeting of the Voter and Candidate Education and Outreach Subcommittee is November 29th. Our next full committee meeting is Tuesday, December 5th. Next slide, please. At our next meeting on December 5th, we will appoint new co-chairs. We will receive a report on the city's code revisions and dig into the transition expenses to date and next year's transition budget. I want to note that we will meet again as a full committee on December 18th, just for an hour from 6 to 7, virtually only, for a special meeting that will be focused entirely on the fiscal year 24-25 transition budget. It is a time-sensitive conversation. All of our scheduled meetings are on the transition website. I encourage you to check them out. And with that, next slide, please. Meeting adjourned at 8 p.m. All right.